So, welcome to our fourth lecture on protein engineering and to understand what proteins basically do every day for you. So, when we now look back, so what we have done in the previous lectures was to show protein engineering, the powerful algorithms of protein engineering that you can do to re-engineer proteins to match our demands in applications. So when we now look at all what enzymes can do for us, there is basically from the United Nations the Sustainable Goal Index, and we included this in the presentations to give you then an idea if you want to dig deeper on what enzymes can do for you. So when we now look at enzymes, enzymes are used to produce bread. Most enzyme mixtures are used to produce, for example, cheese. Enzymes are a big part of reducing, for example, over-fertilization. Enzymes are used in laundry and even for applications like stonewashing jeans. So overall, I'm pretty sure that nearly every day when you watch this video, you have used already an enzyme or an enzyme product that has done something for you today. Enzymes also address billion-dollar markets, for example, in terms of pharmaceuticals, in order to produce all kinds of chemicals, precursors, intermediates, or ingredients such as flavors for food and feed, or fragrances, perfumes, or detergents. When we now go a little bit deeper in what enzymes can basically do in the laundry and textile industry, you see there are all kinds of hydrolases, lipases, proteases, cellulases, amylases, and you can use these enzymes, for example, to reduce fat stains, protein stains, starch stains. Even in bleaching processes, enzymes are used. And what is, from my point of view, also quite an interesting field that is developing are novel coatings with proteins, be it to make textiles antimicrobial, to have an alternative to silver coatings, to put on water repellent coatings through hydrophobic interactions. These are all things that proteins can do for you, but it does not end there. There are also enzyme-based products, like fat and oils that are made with proteins, enzymes, pharmaceuticals we already had, biofuels, beverages, alcohol, food and feed, you name it. In order to look for another example in food and feed, you see there that, for example, proteases, lipases are used either to make cheese or to tune the flavor, phytases in animal feeding, cellulases in biofuels, xylanases, amylases, pectinases, for example, in preparing food or other beverages, and decarboxylases, xanolases in bread. So let's pick now out of this huge application areas where proteins are already used, one to dig a little bit deeper, how through protein engineering you can tailor the properties to application demands. The example that we selected are phytases. So when we look at phytases, there is basically one compound used in nature to store phosphate in the form of phytate, which contains the 6 phosphates. And there are animals like chicken or pig who cannot convert when they eat rapeseeds, food pellets, food cannot digest the phosphate. And rapeseed, for example, contains 1% of the phytate as a storage for phosphate. And if they now basically cannot convert it, what is happening? The phosphates gets into the environment. We get then an over-fertilization of soil and seas, which leads to algae blossom and the end of seas and rivers that are dead. So how can you prevent this? So what you can do is you can include an enzyme, which is called a phytase, into the animal nutrition by putting it into the rape seed or feeding pellets. But in order to do that, you have to take care of certain properties that the phytase has to fulfill to match the application demands. So it must go through the stomach, it must be stable in terms of pH, it might has to work nicely in the intestine, and most importantly, it has to survive the pelleting process, which is usually happening around 80 degrees for 2 minutes. And this is something that is very challenging from a protein engineering point of view. Because in order to have a high activity, you need a high flexibility in the enzyme at the active site. If you want to make an enzyme highly thermostable, you need strong bonds, you need rigidity. And this is something that is contradictory because you cannot have high flexibility and high rigidity at once. So it's a huge protein engineering challenge to make a phytase highly active at 37 degrees within the animal and surviving the pelleting process. And as you have learned, you can use the approach of directed evolution, and then you can find, as you can see here, amino acid exchanges, a D to an E, an aspartate to a glutamate, which gives an additional hydrogen bond. Other changes that gives you 2 additional hydrogen bonds. Third changes that also give additional bonds to strengthen the rigidity. And another one. And when you go through all this process, and then you use computational methods to look at the overall dynamics of the phytase that you saw just right now. Then you can see in black that the wild type enzyme, you see all these black areas here, which basically represents that it's moving a lot. So it has a lot of dynamics from the point where it starts. When we now look at a mutant that is more active and more thermostable, for example, in the red area, you can then see that these global motions, the way the protein breathes and moves, is strongly reduced. So, but how do you still then, if you have it more rigid, get more flexibility and more activity? And this is shown in this overlay here. So you have on the one hand this loop area here in red, from the wild type enzyme. After all the substitutions that you saw, these movements get less. And because of that, the thermal resistance is increased. Because very often when you apply heat, the protein gets in motion. When the protein starts to get in motions, it starts to lose its 3D structure. So you have less movement here. And then when you look at this area, here you have more flexibility compared to here. And here is exactly where the catalytic center of the protein lies. So what is happening through the substitutions that you saw is that you introduce flexibility right above the catalytic center, and because of this more movement, the activity is improved. And when you look at the locations of these substitutions, it's like in a car, you have here these 2 helices, and they are basically substitutions glued together, that they get rigid, and thereby reduce then the global motions here. So this is basically a nice example of protein engineering to tailor phytases to application demands. When we now look in summary, enzymes make our daily life, and you saw several examples, better, not only since today. They are doing this, as you can see on the example on the left, since the thousands of years. And what I would like to give you as a key message is that hopefully you got a feeling what enzymes as natural catalysts can do for you to sustain life and to contribute to the wealth of our society by making processes more sustainable, consuming less reagents, so that the enzymes at the end really contribute to a bio-based economy in a meaningful manner. So thank you for listening.